Good morning. For those I haven't met or do not know me, I am Bobby Brown. I'm the Director of Information Security, Communication Security for Internex Corporation, right down the street here in our backyard. We're very happy and pleased that you all have joined us this morning. So I would say welcome, but normally we say howdy around here, and we hope everyone is enjoying the nice folks, and we try to be friendly here in the East Tennessee and making people feel welcome. We're nestled just here in the foothills of Smoky Mountains. For those who haven't visited before, hopefully you'll have a little extra time to get around and see some of the sights. Just over the hill is Oak Ridge, where they had the Manhattan Project, and from that came Oak Ridge National Labs. We had the K-25, the enrichment facility, Y-12, which the manufacturing facility for the atomic bomb back then. But we've grown. We now have the neutron spallation resource there. So a lot of good things around in the area. Home of the 1982 World's Fair, which we're proud of, and also home to, again, like I said, Internex, and also EPRI, and it's been my home for 40 years now. So I grew up here and continue to live here. So it's a good place. I chose to stick around. So welcome. We're glad that you all have joined us here, and I would like to offer a special thanks to Tim Downs. He's the conference director here that has put this together in conjunction with Mike Amati, whom you all probably met by now, and if you haven't, please reach out to him. And he's the VP of Operations for Granite Key. And for this effort that they put together, it's been, I guess, a lot to organize folks and get them together to do such a thing. Logistics-wise, restrooms, if you go out these doors, just make a hook, a little J-turn here, and you'll find the restrooms. And then as far as emergency, of course, we'll exit through this door if there happened to be an emergency or something like that, and probably straight through down the stairs through the front doors. Anyone in here know CPR in case we were to need such a thing? So we've got a couple of guys here in the back that know CPR. And then one person that we can count on to dial 911 if we happen to need that done. A hand here or there. Okay, we got a couple of designated people. That way, no one's, if we have emergencies, staring around looking at someone else. Are you going to call, or I thought you called? So we got someone set. So.
And don't film the CPR being done and post on YouTube.
Okay.
That's bad manners.
That's just bad taste. I understand. Yeah. So, but they did call. The weather says there may be tornadoes or something like that in the area. So I mean, you never know. So better to be prepared than not by a far stretch. So as this group, and I was kind of thinking about why are we here, and so one of the things is I think we really believe strongly that the modern grid represents some new challenges in terms of security and in terms of threats and vulnerabilities, and to our power system. So that's kind of the context of this. And I got to think, there's a lot of things that hang off the power system, other critical infrastructures that hang off the power system. We think of, our banking and finance, communications, our information technology systems, or postal systems, water, and so on and so on. So I think there's a common spirit here as far as the need and the concern around securing smart grid. And so therefore I'm very pleased, though, to have the speakers that we have lined up today to come and speak to you on the topic, to get us more informed, more aware, and also just to kind of exchange ideas and share thoughts and concerns. So we have Slade Griffin is going to be one of our speakers. He's a security engineer at Internex, works for me. He's a penetration tester, ethical hacker, incident handling response person. So he's been trained in the field for several years now. Has worked at universities, worked at actual security companies that went out and have done those things for government and commercial. is also a local SANS mentor for the Knoxville area. Next on our list is Kevin Brown, another Internex employee, and Kevin's specialty is embedded systems and radio frequency analysis. So we're pleased to have him here. He's also understands a lot of the physical security concerns around security. So sometimes we kind of forget about the tamper portions or the physical aspects, and it's kind of that blend that he brings to the table that really throws an interesting perspective on how we're protecting our systems. Next on the list I have is Ido Dabrowski, and we're glad to have him here with us too, a very accomplished cybersecurity expert in the field, currently a leading member of ITRON's security team, and with him, supporting him is Robert Former, who is heading the R&D division there for ITRON. And then we have Stephen Chasko. I thought I saw Stephen around here somewhere. There you are. Okay. So we've got Stephen Chasko with us from Landis & Gear, where he serves as principal security engineer, and he's a very active member in the NIST activities and the OpenSG activities of the UCA International Users Group. And then we have Ed Barosset up here with us also with Elster, where he serves as the Director of Technology and Standards, and also involved and chairs a lot of standards organizations, such as the C12 under the ANSI, and also highly involved with a lot of the NIST activities and so on. We see Ed everywhere. So if you don't know Ed, that there's some, we got to get you plugged in. All right. So, and lastly but not least, we have Rob Humphreys, who's the Senior IT Security Analyst with Duke Energy. So he'll give us a good perspective from the utility side also today about some of the challenges that they experience and what they have to do to go out and secure a real world system. So sometimes we can tend to be too ethereal, and he knows where the rubber meets the road and has experienced that and can share in his experiences. So I'm sure you realize now, if you haven't already, we've got an all-star cast of speakers, folks that are really plugged into the industry, who've been around, who's trying to make these things work and be secure. Let's see here, we've got our names here. And as far as agenda-wise, we'll begin basically with an overview of the systems. What is AMI? Besides three letters. I know a few years back I was trying to figure out how to spell it, and it seems to have come a long way. And it's a lot going on, and it's a lot going on at a rapid pace. So Slade will start us out in that area. Next, we'll begin a top-down discussion about an approach to, how do we start securing AMI now that we kind of get a general understanding of some of the concerns and risks, some practical tools and ideas about how we approach that. Next, we'll seek to provide understanding about the AMI communications, how they work, some of the overall impact to the grid. Does AMI just affect AMI, or is it further outreaching? Do we have demand response systems attached to this, or other DA equipment, things like that, to the same communications? Can they talk to each other? Some of the other concerns that kind of wrap around that, or can it feed back into larger outages, things like that. So hopefully we'll touch on some topics along those lines. So the next two topics after that are basically testing topics. We'll dive into vulnerability testing, physical security testing, concerns around AMI. Then we'll also hear from, as I mentioned earlier, Rob Humphreys. He'll talk about some of the real world, how does a utility go out and build security into their system, and how do you make those choices in acquiring the proper equipment, acquiring the right people, so on and so forth. And then finally, the experts will provide basically lessons learned, bottoms-up approach. How do we navigate through this AMI security field? What's around the next turn? It seems to be growing and changing as we walk through this quite rapidly. So, and then we're hoping we'll end up with a nice Q&A session at the end. We're going to definitely welcome questions from the audience here, and move it forward. Hopefully we'll meet the needs of everyone here as far as your concerns, where you want to learn and get questions answered. So at this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Slade Griffin to do the introduction on AMI security.
Thanks for that. So I like hearing some jokes from the back row already. That was good. It's going to be a good room. So I go through this, obviously, my perspective on everything, not you the vendors and you the utilities may or may not apply. So I'll go through and talk about like what I've seen, what I'm seeing, how it confuses me, how it might confuse your constituency as a utility or the people that might be buying your products, and then you all can go back through and say, oh, we've already got all that figured out, Slade, so shut up. The other thing, another kind of a logistical issue, welcome to the South, and if we address you as y'all or you'ns, we reserve the right to be, that's either you as an individual or anybody in your immediate vicinity. So just don't assume you're exempt because somebody says y'all, or that somebody is saying onions when they say you'ns. So the hype of AMI, right? Been watching this for about a year. I've been working around the utility industry for almost a year now, which I realize isn't a lot of time. But it's been fun to kind of watch how people have talked about different areas of the smart grid. And I think I was talking with somebody out there a little while ago. I said if I hear smart grid one more time, my head is going to burst. And AMI definitely has been part of the hype cycle where you get up to where you have this huge expectation, or you start down here where it's, hey, this is a terrible idea. And then heard somebody the other day say, and then all this stimulus money showed up and it became a really good idea. Let's get a project out there. And then it comes down here to this disillusionment. It was like, this is expensive. How are we going to get our money back out of this? And with the you are here thing, it's kind of, well, I don't know where you are. I would say, people are coming back up the slope of enlightenment now from what I've seen from vendors that are making things like meters and other equipment. They seem to really have gotten a handle on how they're going to address security and what's going to happen. And I think the main thing we can agree on is that we're merging two infrastructures, right? These have been around forever. We have our power systems electrical infrastructure up there that we got comfortable with. We know how it works. We have our IT systems, and we know how those work. I would say that, coming from an IT background, we've known what to do in security for a while in IT. We just don't do it. And so we have lots of advice for you. But at the same time, when you start merging these two things together, this can be bad. And we've seen some examples of this in some of our testing where these things, has anybody struggled with this yet individually? Any utilities want to admit seeing their IT and their operations people come together? No? So that's one of the other things we really got to work on, right? Sharing information and stuff, and I don't have the answer for that, but it's definitely going to have to come out in the future. How are we going to share, hey, I'm a utility over here and I'm having this problem, and man, I don't want the people in Florida or this other state to have the same problem, and how are we going to share that without in some confidential manner? Our experience that we've seen with this already, went and performed some testing for a utility, and they said, man, we really like this, we want to have you work on this other project, and their IT people said, absolutely not. That is our piece of equipment, and this piece of fiber belongs to us and not you, so we'll choose who tests it, and we've run into that already. And I just want them to have their stuff secure. Would I love the business for Internex? Absolutely. But at the same time, I would love those two groups in that company to get along. I love this representation of an AMI build out, showing it from your utility all the way into your hand. Anybody have a nice diagram like this? Seen this one before? It's like, man, this is slick. What could possibly go wrong? We've got our people working back here. Going out into the WAN, we've got all kinds of different communications, but then you start dropping the technologies on this thing, and you start saying, man, if I was a consumer looking at this, this might be pretty tough for me to figure out. If I was a utility, which technologies am I going to choose? What's better? What's worse? And I'm sure that the meter vendors and utilities have a plan for this. hoping you have a plan for that you can merge these different technologies and understand the different challenges that are brought in as you try to secure different things. But I think what you see here is you see, you know, connections of like external systems. And we've seen, for example, where you get two schools of thought as you're building out AMI, right? You hear this one group of people that's like, you're putting 3 million vulnerable nodes on the internet, right? Everything, all of a sudden every meter out there is a web application, right? And these people are going to crack it. And then you have the other side of the argument where it's like, oh, these are completely private and no one will ever see these, and these are all private networks. But at some point, we've seen examples where private networks have been sold to a utility, you know, and they build out, they get a communications provider, and the product vendors did a fairly decent job of putting together the stuff. Utility ordered a great service from a good provider, and then we start looking at it and it's like, you know, this is touching the internet. They're like, no, our service level agreement says it doesn't. And I'm like, yeah, but this IP address that I found says it does. And it's just one of those things that's like, you know, your security's never really done. And you have all these different, you might have IT and web-based stuff back here. Come over to your WAN communications, what are you using? Are you using cellular? Did you build out your own private network? And then your RF and embedded systems, which Kevin will talk more about later. But it's been real interesting to watch people try and secure all these. And in some areas, we're finding utilities that are faced with limited experience in securing, like maybe the IT side of it, and then the IT people limited experience in the control systems and utility world. And we're going to have to figure out how to work on that. I try to read as much as I can, especially from the vendors, look at the roadmaps that I can get a hold of from utilities and see how they're going to work on this stuff, because it confuses me for sure. And one of the things is this can get really complicated, and it seems like security is becoming more and more complicated. And you can't have it where, you know, you are out there making a product and you have to have some dedicated security expert for that product for your utility. Then your costs go through the roof, their costs go through the roof, and it will be hard to do business together. And right now we're seeing some of the security technologies are limited by what's available in IT. And those IT things don't know how to deal with your control systems, protocols, your modes of operation, and the things that you need to do. And I was looking at firewalls the other day, and I came across a firewall that specifically, you know, we're the control systems firewall. We can do all these protocols and whatever. And it had a maximum throughput in the firewall of, say, I think their best product had like 300 megabits of throughput, and which is great in a traditional control system. But as you build out these huge systems and you have millions of nodes that say they're completely private and you still want to monitor it, you're talking about significant bandwidth requirements. And then you have these IT firewalls. You know, I know of one vendor that claims a 60 gigabit throughput on his firewall, but has no idea how to deal with anything that's not TCP/IP. And you know, at some point, I had one of my friends that works for an IPS vendor the other day say, "Hey man, have you checked out? We're doing this really cool. We're doing cool stuff in SCADA." And I said, "Well, what about like other control systems?" And he's like, "What's that?" I said, "Well, you're gonna have to figure that out." And they make the best of breed IPS. It's a great product. And I said, "You know, can you do stuff like DNP?" He's like, "Well, what's that?" So yeah, see, you're gonna have to. I said, "You gotta go talk to these people. Don't just go to one of the conferences and one of the talks and say, we've got a SCADA product. Yeah, I know your product is good, it's fast, it can do all kinds of rules, it has all this zero-day protection, but if it doesn't understand the protocol that's being used, it's no good." This is kind of another representation of the same thing we just saw, and I like this one because it shows all the clouds, and we like to say clouds now. And to the cloud. Man, anybody else hate that commercial? What is in the cloud in that commercial? Okay, good, it's not just me. So what we see here, I think that this gives another representation of the same thing, but it shows that your internal and external threats are expanding. insider threats, always a problem. And that doesn't mean that your people back in your control center are malicious. It means that people make mistakes. Your people out in the field are malicious. They make mistakes. How tempted are they to pick up that USB stick that's laying around and plug it into, you know, whatever they're using to read a meter? Or, and then what can that system affect? Our hope, my hope, is that as security matures in this area, and I've definitely seen, I think without exception, all the meter vendors taking great steps in security in the meters. You know, in 2009, had, you know, Travis Goodspeed is speaking tomorrow. He said, man, I think, you know, I've looked at a couple of these things. I think somebody could write a worm that would affect these things. And then 2 months later, 2 guys from IOActive did it, you know, and it was, and ever since then, I've seen all the meter vendors like, okay, yeah, that's something we have to take into consideration. And with the different players shown in this, I think this will show that we're going to have some kind of communication as vulnerabilities are discovered and concerns are made aware as the markets drive prices, and you're trying to get things out to your meters, and who's going to mess with those. I think this thought in security used to be what I would hear in pen tests all the time. We would say, you know, we found vulnerability X, and I would actually hear CFOs say, you know, well, why would anybody want to do that? And I think we've grown beyond that. I hope nobody's saying that anymore, because people will do it if they can, and we don't want to affect your neighbor. And back to the 2 schools of thought thing, you know, you have all these people saying, you know, the grid is really fragile, and you have other people saying, no, the grid is really resilient because, you know, when was the last time your lights went out? I actually heard that on a telecom the other day by a pretty high-ranking guy. And I think the accurate question to ask is, when was the last time somebody wanted to make the lights go out? Once you've been acquired as a target, then the availability of the equipment and the research that goes on these days, it's going to be an ongoing process. I think is what I'm trying to get to here. We want to keep security in the forefront of our minds, not get to a point where somebody comes out with a certification. Certifications are great. Say, hey, your implementation is secure, right? Well, let's give benefit of the doubt. Let's say that certification is accurate and complete, but that implementation was secure at that very moment, and at no point past the time that deliverable was handed to you. We've seen that in IT. I have, where I've handed something in to a client, and a year later come back and retest the system, same vulnerability. The domain user I created a year ago was still present, so the pen test was much easier the second time, because I just logged right into their system. And my hope with the people I've seen being hired by the vendors, the steps I've seen taken by the utilities, it looks like got a pretty firm handle on it, and we're starting to move forward through it. But I would just encourage you to not ever, you know, rest on, hey, I got a certification, my implementation is secure. But of course, you know, that's up to you.